This is Anthony with the Anthony DeCecco podcast, episode 8. And this one is called Almost Minnesota. We're going to talk a lot about music and the other half of my life other than tennis.
So Anthony, this is interesting because you're so passionate about tennis, and yet I'm starting to figure out that you're equally or almost equally passionate about music.
Yeah, well, I don't think, first of all, tennis and music go pretty well together. I mean, John McEnroe, he used to play guitar.
Okay.
And you find a lot of these guys, Vitas Gerulaitis, play guitar. So I think it goes together, but yeah, music is a big part of my life.
Have you always been really passionate about music?
Yeah, always, from day one, yeah.
Okay. So I heard a rumor that you only will sit in the front row at concerts. Is that true?
Well, it started out when I was younger. I used to go to concerts and, of course, I couldn't afford a seat in the front. And so I would just be sitting somewhere. And I never really had the experience of a concert. And, not to be disrespectful, but I wasn't really interested in the part of the concert where you were interacting with the fans, with the other people. Like, it wasn't all about going and getting drunk and hanging out with the fans and going, oh, this is great. It was all about the music. And so what I did was in later years, I started to be able to afford / the bands that I happen to like were not like the most famous bands. So between the two, it got to a point where I could pretty much be in the front row of any concert I wanted if I did the work, either by going early and hanging around for hours or buying the ticket.
Your life changed in 1979 when you saw a band in Westchester.
Yep. Well, so what happened was they had a Phillips Auditorium, and actually my daughter, I just went and sat with her in that auditorium for her orientation when she went to Westchester University. It's a beautiful building. And
I did theater there, actually.
You did there. It's a beautiful building. And the Kinks were coming. Now, I didn't know anything about the Kinks. And my roommate, Justin, he loved the Doors. And I remember at the time thinking, Jim Morrison was dead, but I was like, I really wish it was the Doors instead of the Kinks, because I've been hearing all the Doors songs and I didn't know any of the Kinks music. So I listened to the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and the Who and all the famous groups, but I didn't really know the Kinks at all. And this is 1979, so they'd been around for 15 years, and I didn't know any of their music. And so Ray Davis and his brother Dave Davis, they came to the Phillips Auditorium. I was like pretty close, and it was just like, it became a different ball game, because then I went out and bought all their albums, everyone I could find, listened to all their music, and they became like, there's so many lessons in their music, and Ray Davis is like the best songwriter of all time in my mind.
Why is that?
His songs seem to have a personal and a universal to everything. So, it matched up with the philosophy. There's a cleverness to it, there's a humor to it, and it's not your straightforward, like, I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. Although I do like Kiss, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Kiss, but yeah, it's the songs, there's always a double meaning to the song, and you can personalize it. And I always felt like, the songs that he was writing were like applicable at the time to my life. And so I found a lot of answers in the music.
That's interesting. And again, you're consistent. You're really consistent, because you have this theme where you like to look for the deeper meaning in things, yeah. And you gravitate toward books, toward authors, toward musicians and songwriters who kind of meet that criteria. What song, is there one of his that really did it for you? Well,
no, I mean, they have the famous ones like Lola and You Really Got Me. And I think the thing about the Kinks and Ray Davies, and I say his name both ways, Ray Davis is the English way and Ray Davies is the American way. But, so, he has a consistent quality in the songs that he writes. And the famous ones like You Really Got Me and Lola are, great songs, in my opinion anyway, and I think they stand up against the other great songs, the Beatles and the Stones. And I think, you know, for my money, I put the Kinks aside, and then everybody else can fight for number 2. Because he did write all the hit singles. He did write the concept albums, and he's still doing it today. And the other bands, either some of the people are dead or the people are just rehashing. Like, you know, the Rolling Stones, you know, try to come out with like a new song and pretend like one they wrote like 40 years ago is a new one today or something like that. Or they do covers of the blues songs. But Ray's still writing albums, and he's still doing something legitimate at, you know, 75, 76 years old. So the longevity plus the consistency and the high quality.
So that's kind of your barometers of good music, because like, you know, there's got to be a difference between music that you just like and the music that really inspires you.
Yeah, the music that I just like, I don't listen to. No, but the stuff that inspires me, because again, I need the strong dose of the music. So what it comes down to is, you know, either they're saying something, or like I'm not listening. Like if there's nothing going on and nothing that I could take with me, you know. It's the same with movies. So you could do like a Mount Rushmore for, and everybody can do that, and everybody can say who they really love. And by the way, if people are really moved by a certain band, I'm all for that. It's just that, you know, this is the particular band that worked for me, and they happen to be brothers. So that's another thing.
Yeah, there you go. Now I understand that you met Ray on a number of occasions. When was the first time you met him?
We have a relationship, which is interesting because he has a fan club. We have this guy, Frank Lima, who's head of his fan club, and he lives in New Jersey, and he's been to England, and he's had dinner with Ray, and you know, my brother and I are sort of on the same level as he is. But the only thing is, we never really had much interaction with Ray. It's weird the way it happened. You know, we go to a show, he sort of recognize us after a couple of times, and then there's the twin thing. And then, you know, one time he was having dinner in Atlantic City, and he was by himself, and I was at the bar having a drink, and I thought he was waiting for somebody, and maybe they stood him up or something like that. So he waved over, and I called my brother, and we went over and sat with him, and that's when we were able to share that, you know, we do tennis, we love the music, you know, we're from South Philadelphia, we moved from the city to the suburbs like his family did when he was younger, and we thought we just had a lot in common with him. And to be honest, he's a Gemini, and so is my dad, and they're very much alike. They're soft-spoken.
When was your dad's birthday?
He was June 12th.
Okay, my dad was June 3rd.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. So the Geminis are like, they're interesting people. They're always bright. They have the two sides to them, which Ray Davies does too. On stage, he's very extroverted, but off stage, he's very introverted. And so anyway, we ended up talking to him and meeting him. And then at subsequent concerts, like I saw him at Carnegie Hall, and I, you know, was able to go backstage based on the way that I looked. Like I look like one of the musicians.
You're a rock star.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing, and that's probably why I got into this with the music and the playing that we'll talk about in a second. But you know, when you drive through like the toll booth and people are like, you know, what band do you play in, or what, you know, are you a famous rock star? And, or I walk down the street in New York with Betsy and somebody like whispers in my ear like, I love your albums or something, and I was like, you say albums? Like, who do they think I am? Some old timer?
See, I would want to know. I would be like...
Well, most of the time I get like the Bon Jovi, Steven Tyler, you know, kind of stuff. Although Gary Loris from the Jayhawks said Evan Dando from the Lemonheads, which I thought was good because he was one of the, you know, best looking guys. But I don't know if he's talking about Evan Dando now or like
That's okay, I get Cher all the time.
Oh, there you go.
You mentioned you have a theory that musicians kind of label their fans. Do you feel you were labeled?
Well, yeah, so I guess what happens is most of the time, like they're like, okay, these fans really love me, or they love the music, or, you know, and they're fanatical, or this, that, or the other thing. But I had to sort of become a fan that was sort of on an equal level with the people that I met. Like, I didn't like hero worship Ray Davis. I just thought that his music and his lyrics were amazing. So I wasn't going to, like, you know, just like run around like a puppy dog. I was going to try to explain to him who I was and where I came from. And then if we could meet on that level, plus have the music in common, which I know he loves his own songs, I thought that would be the thing.
Are you like that diehard of a fan, Anthony, where you will go to all over the place?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm exactly like a deadhead where I'm going to follow them for the whole year to every concert that they do. But I do have a couple of theories. One is that I like to see a band 2 nights consecutive if I can, just in case they leave a song out on one of the concerts, okay? It's like I get a better chance of hearing what I want. And then I do like, and this theory I think is proven true, that if you go to their hometown, it's a big difference. Their attitude, the way they're relaxed when they play, the confidence that they have, I think it's best to see people in their own home.
So did you fly over to England to see Ray?
I did a couple of times, and I saw him at Royal Albert Hall. I went with my brother, and you know, by now there was some interaction between us. You know, not a whole lot, but he knew that we were tennis players and that we liked the music and that we weren't just like stalkers or something like that. So I remember that we were in the 5th row, and we went up and sat in the front row, and then somebody came for their seats, and the security guard said, "You have to leave." And we decided not to leave, and then Ray stuck up for us and let us sit by the speaker for the whole show, so that was nice.
Did he saw all this happening while he was on stage performing?
Yeah, and I guess in between a song he said, you know, you can let him stay there. I mean, I would think that, you know, if somebody came all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, that you would let them stay too, you know. But
that's very sweet. You even had dinner with his family. How did that happen?
Then the second, maybe the second trip, we went, he was at these little small places, like, so instead of going to London, to Royal Albert Hall, he was at Bexhill by the Sea, which is down near Dover and the town of Rye. And he was at Milton Keynes, which is, you know, I call it the King of Prussia of the suburbia outside of North London. And we actually went to his house where he grew up and to the bar where they first played, and they have all the memorabilia and stuff, and it was nice. So we did our own trip. We got into a car and drove all over, every place but London. We actually drove through London, but we went to all these little towns. We met all these people, and when we got to Bexhill by the Sea, I guess something that didn't like strike us right away was that when you go to Royal Albert Hall, probably a good 50% of the people at that show are not living in London. They're from out of town somewhere, not from America. But when you go to Bexhill by the Sea, there is nobody from America except for us. So we were in with all the British people and all the local British people. And there was one restaurant in town, an Italian restaurant, and we always had a problem getting a martini because they don't make them in England for some reason. I mean,
oh, really?
Like in those towns, yeah, you know, you get like a little bowl of soup and you get like beer, right? Because you're in the outskirts, you're not in like a hotel, and they got, you know, go find something that looks like a martini glass. But anyway, so we're in an Italian restaurant, and you know, we stayed at a nice inn, and they sent us to the hotel, to the restaurant. Said, you know, say hello to the owner, and they said they think Ray Davis's family's going to be there, and his nephew was going to be there. And I was thinking, you know, nephew, maybe he's like 7 or 8 or something, but the nephew was like my age. I forgot that Ray's 76, and I'm like, so he's my nephew. So anyway, we went to dinner and we met his sister, Peg, and some other people, and then we went to a show.
Did they invite you to join them?
No, they were at the
hi?
next table.
Okay.
We said hello and everything. And I remember the first thing she said was, she said, Ray told us about the twins from Philadelphia or something like that. So she had like a little bit of a heads up, and she was an older woman and she was great. So we took a lot of pictures. We went to the show, and it was the first night. You know, you fly in usually overnight. Sometimes when you go to London, you get there in the morning. Of course, you don't go to sleep because you're wide awake and you have adrenaline. So we went that whole day, drove all over the south of England, and just stayed up, went to dinner and went to the concert. And I didn't have a whole lot of energy, but he had a book signing afterwards. So we got in line. We were like the first ones in line for the book signing, and I remember the look on his face. Well, he said, "What are you guys doing here, right? Like, why would you be at like Bexhill by the Sea with like 300 English people?" And we said we came to see, you know, the new songs, because he was doing a new album and he was practicing these songs, and so we wanted to get the songs before they got onto an album, and we wanted to see him in his area. So the next night, we drove through London, went up to Milton Keynes, and we stayed in this really cool bed and breakfast. And this place ended up being like a local theater that like you had subscriptions to. So this one, his family wasn't there, and normally we would try to like time it where we could get to our seats just when the concert started, so I didn't have to sit around for a while. And what happened was, my brother went to dinner, I went to the show to check when it was going to start, and they were like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Davis." So I ran back, got him, and then I went over to the concert.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it was a small theater, and it was people had memberships to the theater, so it wasn't going to be anybody outside of this little small Milton Keynes town. And we showed up at the show, and it was like 2 songs in because we mistimed it. And I had a front row seat and like a 10th row seat. So we walked up and we were talking to the usher, and Ray motioned that there were 2 seats in the front row, so on the other side, and that he saved for us. And there were only 400 seats, so it was 398 Brits and us. And so he saved the front row, so we went and sat down, and then he referenced us maybe 7 times throughout the concert. He talked about tennis, he talked about Wimbledon, he talked about, in one of his songs called Village Green, he talked about American tourists, and he gave us a nod, and it just went on and on and on. So it was just the best. And then after the concert, the stage was one of those stages that had a couple of steps up to it, like that kind of stage, not like your rock and roll stage, like a theater stage. And so the British people just were like, between us coming from America just to see this stupid little concert and Ray pointing out all the stuff that he was pointing out, everybody wanted to take a picture with us. So we took all these pictures with all these, and they were so nice, and it was just like the best experience in the world. So anyway, it's kind of cemented, and I actually sent him a letter during this COVID to check on him, and I explained to him that my dad passed away, and he did remind me a lot of my dad, and like it or not, he might have to take his place as like sort of a mentor, because he has with his music. And he's still doing it till today. He just came out with a.
That's really sweet. Do you think you'll hear back from him?
No, I don't think I think he's a pretty private person. Yeah, I don't think.
That's okay.
He'll mention it next time I see him.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But so yeah, so that was that's a huge reason why I love music in general, and then really nobody takes the place of the Kinks.
That's really cool that people, strangers really, feel so comfortable so quickly around you, and they can discern that you're not some crazy person.
I think more recently, as I've gotten older, people seem to get me within the first few minutes. So I like that because, you know, I'm pretty transparent. Like, I wouldn't want, like, you know, what do they said about Malcolm Gladwell had that book, Talking with Strangers, and they said, well, so most people when you talk to them, like a full like 60% of the people, okay, what you see is not what you get. And that becomes a problem sometimes when people like misunderstand, and that's what some of the problems they have with the police officers and people they pull over, because they don't mean to be that way, but they don't come across authentic. So with me, I've tried to become more authentic as I've gotten older, and the people seem to pick up on it quicker. So now we're just trying to do it as like in a split second, you know, as soon as you meet me.
Well,
and
keep it up. That's good. Now, Isabel, your daughter, shares your love of music, and I understand you guys go to concerts together, which is not norm. I mean, it's not the norm for parents and their kids to go to concerts.
Well, you do have
when they get older.
So I have a son, and he played guitar at a young age, and we played together, and we have videos on YouTube, and he plays songs like Maggie May and Brown Sugar, songs that he probably shouldn't have been singing when he was 8 years old. But he played with me when we were younger, and we had a good time with that. But he's moved into more of like the modern music, like the rap. And my daughter, she's like a Queen, Rolling Stones, Eagles. She loves that music. And it just happened that we started like hanging out together. I would, in my car, I would take her and her girlfriends, and we would just go out for a drive for an hour and sing all the songs in the car. And so anyway, we ended up going to some concerts, and then she had to give, had to do a project in college on her favorite like moment with her dad or something. I don't forget what it was, but anyway, it ended up being this Eagles concert. And you know, this was a particular concert. It was at Citibank in Philadelphia, sold out. You know, I don't know how many people fit in there, 40,000 or 50,000, and you know, we couldn't get front row. In fact, I got like about 10th row on the floor, and then as we were going to the concert, we took a train, and I was looking on StubHub, and it said they had these 2 front row tickets for $2,500 each, which, you know, would be with fees probably about $3,000, it's about $6,000, right? So we're not going to pay that for front row, but we did get a band when we walked in, which meant we were allowed on the floor and got us to the 10th row. So the night before, Billy Joel was there, and when the usher, it was a girl usher, really nice, she was a big smile on her face. She said, "Do you need help with your seats?" And I said, "No, we're sitting in the same place that we sat last night for Billy Joel, front row." She's like, "Oh, you're really lucky." I'm like, "All right, good." So we went by her and we sat in the front row. So now we're in the front row center in these 2 seats that I'm thinking nobody was going to buy. But maybe.
Wait a minute. So let me clarify. You looked at those seat numbers on StubHub, so you knew where to go.
I knew which seats were not sold. Yeah.
He's a crafty one. He is.
and I had Plan B in the 2nd row. I had 2 seats that were not sold, so they weren't sold. So I thought, okay, I would sit in them, and you know, on the chance that the people that owned the tickets, whoever was trying to sell them for $6,000 would come, I'd have to leave. But anyway, so we sit down and we get through James Taylor, the opening act, and now they have cameras on stage, and now we're up on the screen, and people are texting, and they're like, "Hey, where'd you get seats like that? How'd you get in the front row?" and all this kind of stuff. So we're keeping it down, and I'm telling Isabel to be quiet, but she's so excited that she's telling all her friends that she's sitting in the front row at the Eagles concert, and I'm thinking we're gonna get busted any second. So as we go along, you know, sure enough, somebody, the usher comes up, and the couple next to us who we made friends with were sitting in somebody's seat, so they got kicked out, and then a new couple came in, but they became friends with us, and then we became friends with the people behind us. So we were pretty entrenched, and I was keeping my eyes open for like an extra 2 seats somewhere along the line in case we got kicked out, because we were becoming so friendly in this community. And now it's in between the concerts, right? So there's like some downtime, and I'm like, well, maybe they just waited to come to the Eagles and they're going to show up. So I'm having a heart attack the whole time, and Isabel's having a
Was it
a
fun
great
for
time.
you? I mean, if you were worried the whole time?
Yeah, well, after a certain point, I figured it was past the point of no return. But I had to get into the Eagles concert, and then Isabel, she was, you know, saying that we didn't have enough room with our chairs, so she was down at the end trying to move people's chairs, and I'm like, "Hey, we don't even have these seats. You can't switch chairs." And then when we walked down the end, somebody was like, hey, is that Anthony and Isabel, somebody from Tennis Addiction? So it was like a whole funny night. But anyway, we did get to see the whole concert, and there were a couple close calls. Like somebody came up to me and an usher, and I was like, oh, it's going to be time to leave. And he said, I love your pants, you know, like 'cause I had these scotch and soda pants on. And then some lady came up to me and she said, you know, I guess because we were talking to so many people, they thought we were somebody famous, and they were like, can I get a picture with you? So those were like the close calls, but they ended up not kicking us out, and we watched the whole show. So that was a great experience, and we had such a good time, and we sang along to every song, and that'll be something that, you know, we'll have forever.
That is so cool.
So it was a lot of fun.
I mean, how many people can pull that off?
Well, I know, you know, some people, even people that I know that I've given that idea to, it doesn't work all the time.
No, you have to have, because I've been that person who's tried to do that, and that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I used to have a friend in LA who did this kind of stuff all the time. She's just like, just act like you belong. Just act like you know you're supposed to be here. And of course, I'm too Catholic. You know, I'm like feeling like I'm going to get caught confessing to everybody, you know, like, no, I shouldn't be doing that. And of course, they see the guilt all over you when they come right up to you. Where's your ticket, ma'am? You know. Talk to me about this love affair you have with bands from Minneapolis.
Yes, I you know, I like classic rock bands and all the ones that everybody liked, and the Kinks I still love big time. But then I started to gravitate towards these Minneapolis bands, and I actually, you know, there's a really great comic that passed away, Mitch Hedberg. He's from Minneapolis. And then when I would go to Jamaica, I would meet all these people from the Midwest, and Betsy's from Illinois and went to school in Wisconsin. And I was like, you know, I like these people a lot. So it just so happened that every time that I heard something that I liked, like I heard the Replacements, and I'm like, I love that. And it's like, where are they from? Minneapolis. And I love Soul Asylum, they're from Minneapolis. And then the Jayhawks, and they're from Minneapolis. So these three bands, which are still doing stuff today, are small enough that I can go see them in small venues. They've become my favorite now.
So you go to Minneapolis to see them?
I do. I go almost twice a year now.
Do you drive or fly?
No, I fly. And I got the whole system in. Like, this is what my concert day looks like. So I get up early in the morning, I fly into a city, wherever it is, and I go to the hotel, settle in, you know, go out for a run in the afternoon, and look at the venue and see what it looks like and get my game plan for how it's going to work. Now I probably have like a good ticket, so I'm not so concerned, or it's general admission and I just have to go early. Then I'll go back, get a shower, get dressed, go out to dinner, and time it to end up at the show.
How early, excuse me for interrupting you, do you go if it's general admission? Because you're very serious about getting right up in the front.
Yeah, so what I do is, my system is to go to dinner close to the venue, as close as I can, like right across the street. So then I could keep an eye on it. And another trick that I've used, I go to the Brooklyn Bowl a lot, and another trick I use is, and I should say one more thing about this, is the people in the front row are always the same, wherever you go. So once you go to a couple of these concerts, it's the same people, and so they recognize you because the way I look like this, so they recognize me. So what I'll do is I'll go early and I'll be the first one, and then when the second person comes, hopefully there's somebody that's seen me before, like, oh yeah, I remember, I'm Anthony, you know, hi Paul, or hi Sarah, and listen, would you mind just holding my spot while I go to dinner? So they don't mind, because they sit. Now I have a problem, you probably could tell by the way I talk, I have a problem sitting still. So I'm not going to be able to stand there for 2 hours before a show starts. And I've gotten better about it, but I can't do it. So what I do is I ask them to hold my spot, and I'll leave my jacket or something, and then I'll go. So that's what I've been doing recently. And just to go through the relationships that I've developed with these bands, is it starts out with like a Paul Westerberg, who is the singer for the Replacements, and I went and saw him at the Arlo Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. And you know, again, he mentioned the twin thing, and he was happy to see us. And
but how did you meet him initially, though?
Well, I don't really meet the people.
He
like,
just sees two twins in the front
yeah,
row.
like, and it would have been
over
at
and over
another
again.
concert. Like, we
Okay.
were in Philadelphia at a concert, and now we're in. I'm telling you, when you go to their place, either they are like really give you a lot of respect because they're like, you know, where you go. Like, I went to the Jayhawks concert in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm in the front row, and the guy's like, "Where's your brother?" And I'm like, "Oh, he couldn't make it this time," but. You know, they're impressed if you go to see them in Minneapolis. You know, it's not like, oh, I just happen to be in town. I actually get on a plane, I go, and so I you know, with Paul Westerberg, I also like, again, because I have the whole day to kill and I'm by myself. Like, I'll go to like the tour bus or something and walk by, and then I've run into Paul Westerberg there, and when he was in Lancaster, and so anyway, so I would go and see. So I went saw Paul Westerberg, Tommy Stinson, which is the bass player, and actually with him, I've become much friendlier. I've gotten to know him, and we've developed a real relationship. I mean, he's in my phone, and then a bunch of these guys now are in my phone, and because you have to get past the initial. Like, you're just there as a fan, and maybe you do know the music, maybe you don't know the music, maybe you know a little bit of the music, maybe like you'd be like starstruck if you met them. And again, like, I'm not 25 years old. I'm like almost a peer with these people,
right?
You know, not on the music level, but on the in my own profession. And they all seem to love tennis. So Ray Davies plays tennis. And then we had Tommy Stinson. I became friends with him. His girlfriend is from the Midwest. And, you know, I would show up and I would give him, like, you know, bring a gift for his daughter or something. Like, I want to show him that I'm an adult. I'm not a burnout from the 70s and I'm not
it's
reliving.
important to have mutual respect.
Yeah, I'm not reliving my youth. You know, I just happen to love their music, and you know, they're writing it, so I'm sure they're happy that somebody loves it as much as I do.
Of course.
And then Soul Asylum, when they were in Brigantine, we made. Well, when I went to Minneapolis, and their bass player is from Philadelphia, Winton, and what I did was I asked. We were in the first class, and I asked her if, you know, he could come up and sit with us because there was an open seat, and she did, and so from then on we got VIP at any concert.
Is it true that they invited you and Alex on stage to sing with them?
Yeah, they did. I mean, we're not the only ones. They do it periodically at shows for this one song called "Stand Up and Be Strong," but it just so happened in Brigantine because we made friends with the bass player, and he said, you know, you could come up with us and we'll call you up, and then like you know, I thought nothing of it, right? I just went about drinking and watching a show, and then the song came up and they're like, okay, come up. So we came up, so it was a lot of fun. And then one last thing about Soul Asylum that was fun is I went to Cleveland. I drove Cleveland 6 hours, okay, so door to door, all in a turnpike. So I drive 6 hours, go out to dinner, Alex and I, and then we go to the concert, and we had like the 4th row. And for some reason they had 2 love seats in the right by the stage. And so the one love seat wasn't taken, so I went and sat in it. And you know, so now our feet are like on the stage and they're doing the concert. And it was a best seat. And I remember about halfway through the show, a security guard came over and said, "You're sitting in somebody else's seat." And I said, I said, "Well, I don't know, where are they?" And they pointed, and the person that said to the security guard, "No, let them stay." So he let us stay in his seat, and we went into the bathroom after the show, and he said, "I'm not the kind of guy that likes to be in that front row." He goes, "So it was good that you guys took that seat." So that worked out nicely. And you know, another front row seat, another interaction with the crowd. I think he was calling us the dynamic duo or something because he likes Aquaman, he likes those superheroes. So it was like a lot of fun that way. And then with the Jayhawks, just recently before COVID is when I actually became friends with them, because Gary Lewis would be talking to me from the stage, like when I went to First Avenue. The First Avenue is a famous concert hall in Minneapolis, and they have stars on the outside of it, and anybody that plays there gets a star. and it's just unlike any other concert venue. And so anyway, I went there, and he talked to me from the stage, and then people were coming up like, "How you know Gary Lewis?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really know him." You know what I mean? I just went to a couple concerts, and like he recognized me, called me Evan Dando one time, and asked where my brother was. That's all I know. And but he'd be like pointing to me during some song or whatever, and he didn't do this with anybody else. So I went to the Brooklyn Bowl, and the 2 nights in a row, and I was going to San Francisco the next day. And so the first night I went, and I brought a package with Tennis Addiction t-shirts and a little card, and this has been my new system, is to explain to them where I'm coming from so they could get the idea without, like, you know, having to like go through 10 years of going back and forth talking for 2 minutes at a concert. They could get the whole story. And so anyway, I gave them the t-shirts and all this kind of stuff, and apparently they came looking for me after the show because I don't have a VIP or whatever, asking if I could come backstage and hang out with the band at the after concert party. But I left because I normally just am on my own anyway, so I just leave. And the next night I came, and the Karen, who's the keyboard player, was wearing my Tennis Addiction shirt. So on stage,
gosh.
so it was nice. And then she said, and after the show, you come backstage with us. So I did go backstage. I met him. I met Gary Lewis. I met his girlfriend. They put all the numbers in. And then when they did the virtual concerts, he would like shout out to me on the like virtual concert.
That is amazing, Anthony.
So it was a lot of fun that way. And then I went back to my hotel room, and the band was staying there, and they had a party going on upstairs. So I hung out with them till like 2 o'clock. Needless to say, that flight was rough. Said the next morning, because I think I had to leave at like 4 to get to the airport. So I slept like 2 hours. But it was cool. I met him. He wanted to play tennis. Next time he's in town, he wants to come to the club. And, you know, it's been like that.
That's really nice. That's such a great story that you're able to meet people that, you know, have been, say, musical idols for you. On that line, how did you segue from being a fan of music to playing music?
Well, I always like wanted to play guitar, and I did pick it up, and I took some lessons, and I had a friend, Mark DiCosio, who's a very good musician, and he owns a recording studio in Phoenix, and he's since moved. But we were so close that, you know, his son's name is Anthony, and he moved out to Phoenix a few years ago, but I've stayed in touch with him. I've gone out and I visited him. And he was my first guitar teacher, and we traded tennis and guitar. And I remember, right, the first song I ever played was the Kinks' Waterloo Sunset, and he taught me that. And Betsy didn't want to hear that. I played it so many times because it was the only song I could play. And then I had another guitar teacher, Tony Giuliano, and he was great. He liked the Beatles, so he taught me a lot of Beatles songs. And then
do you write music, Anthony?
Yeah, I do write music now, and actually, you know, as we segue into this next piece, what happened was I got involved with Rick Snow, who owns a music studio and gives guitar lessons and does songwriting courses, and I started taking lessons, and then we started hitting it off. And we like found that we had a lot in common, and I got to meet his parents, and I've become friendly with his parents, and now we're like family, and we both coincidentally have a love for the same Minneapolis groups. So one day we were talking, and actually, like, Rick's played in bands for years, and I never played in a band, nor would I think about playing in a band. I mean, I'm pretty much like an intermediate guitar player. Maybe I'm like as a guitar player, I'm like a 5 out of 10. And as looking like a rock star, I'm like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So the problem was it didn't match up. So I needed to get together with somebody that has some sort of skill. So that's where Rick came in. And he was nice enough to ask me as one of his students to play with him one night, and then like the rest is history. Now we play together.
Is that how you came up with the name for the band, Almost Minnesota, because you both like bands from Minneapolis?
So I got to give credit to Rick for that name, because he came up with it. and I guess it's a little bit of a takeoff on that movie, Almost Famous. And but it's done well for us, just like Tennis Addiction, the name. So Almost Minneapolis didn't sound right, so we did Almost Minnesota, and we have all this stuff like we almost rehearse, or we almost have a set list, or almost anybody's in our band, you know, or we almost didn't show up.
I love that. I love that.
So it's really been good. The name's been awesome for us, and you know, we play in the local area, and everybody that plays, it's like John Doe band, or you know, Ashley Davis band. Like they're all the person's names,
right?
Because that's what usually people do. We're the only ones that think in our head we're doing something different. Like we're like performing a concert, and everybody else is just playing for a couple $100 at a bar. But we think we're like doing a concert, and
that's okay. It's a good mindset to have.
And we do a lot of the songs from the bands that we like from. So it's a tribute.
Well, I can't wait to hear you guys play together, and I look forward to hearing some of yours and Rick's stories when he comes out.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so here I am now with Rick Snow, because the name of this episode is Almost Minnesota, and since Rick is like, I don't want to say 50%, because he's more like 90% of Almost Minnesota, but for today's purposes, we'll just do a 50-50. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, what you do and maybe how we got together?
Yeah, so I met Anthony probably about 12 or 13 years ago. We have a mutual friend, Dan, who got in touch with me saying that he knew someone that was interested in taking some guitar lessons at his house. So I went to his house, and Anthony was the last student that I met that night, and I met his family, and we spent some time in his kitchen talking at the very end of the evening, and it turns out we had a mutual interest in this band called The Replacements that he's the only other person that I knew of that had ever heard of them before. So we started talking about them, and just, you know, became really close friends ever since. So
yeah, that's the story we give people. But the truth is we met in London when we were like out partying one night. No,
right.
That's not true. Okay, that is the true story. And the other thing that's interesting about Rick and I is we also both like the Dallas Cowboys, which is unusual for people from this area. What else do we have in common? Do we have anything else in common? We're both married 25 years, I think.
yeah, this year 25 years.
We both have a son and a daughter.
Both have a son and a daughter.
Yeah, we didn't realize this. Like Rick said, we met 12 or 13 years ago. We just started to find out that we did have a lot in common with each other. And it's a very, you know, relaxed relationship. We complement each other well. And it's been a lot of fun. So what about this Almost Minnesota? How did we get into this?
All right.
Because I know you've done some stuff in the past with bands, right?
Right.
Didn't you open for somebody famous or something? Or?
I was in a cover band back in the 90s, and we got a chance to open up for the band Kansas. So that happened. That was pretty exciting. But all throughout, you know, my adult life, I've been in and out of bands, whether it's you know, a full electric band or, you know, done acoustic music. And for the last handful of years, I've done a lot of stuff, just, you know, solo acts and stuff like that. And it was kind of getting to the point where I could like take it or leave it. And then all of a sudden, Anthony started saying, hey, I might come out and, you know, hang out with you tonight. Is it cool if I get up and play a couple of songs? And I'm like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. So he'd come and play 2 or 3 songs. And, you know, at the end of the evening, I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, that was kind of fun. So next week I go to do a gig and, you know, get the same phone call. He comes back in again. We do like maybe 3 or 4 songs, and all of a sudden it's just like, you know, turning to 4 or 5, 6 songs. And I just was like, this is fun. I'd rather play with him than not play with him. And it just, you know, turned into, hey, do you want to do this on any kind of a regular basis?
And the funny thing is, it's a lot like my favorite movie, which is Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, because they have one guy that talks all the time, Paul Newman. He doesn't have it. He has little skill, like he's never shot a gun or anything like that. And then they have Robert Redford. So you could, you know, figure out that in our band, you know, Rick has the skill and I'm the one that talks a lot. And but we both bring something to the table. And the thing that's been great about it is, for some reason, we've been well received. Like, people like us.
It works. I still don't get it. But
we have this set list that doesn't include most of the songs that you hear on a regular basis. We've changed songs. We've slowed them down. You know, again, we're heavy on Minneapolis, which we're always joking that, you know, we would mention nobody even knows half of these songs that we do from Minneapolis, from the Replacements. Sometimes you mention the Replacements or Soul Asylum, and, you know, maybe they know Runaway Train, and that's about it. And the Jayhawks, you know, you find one out of, like, you know, 80 people that know the Jayhawks. They think they're like a basketball team or something. So that's really what it came down to. It came down to us, like, accidentally. Well, almost is really the big thing about it. Like Jeff almost made it today for the last episode, but he didn't make it. And we would make these jokes, like we almost rehearsed, or we almost had a set list, because we didn't have a set list until the last 2 gigs or whatever. And, you know, we almost got paid. And people almost came. Almost anybody's in the band, right? Why don't you talk about the clown car?
Yeah, so this summer's been a bit of a clown car show, for sure. We've got a cast of characters that show up on any given evening, and, you know, all of a sudden it's like people are getting up with guitars. A couple of our students that come to my studio, actually they're called the Dynacorns, and they get up and jam with us. The drummer for the Dynacorns just turned 4, and I believe the guitar player is now 7.
Oh,
She just turned 7.
They're getting old.
So yeah, we run the gamut with that.
Yeah, so no, that's been the cool thing, is that the students that you have, and also you know, your business has been taking off, and now you're in a magazine, and March with Music is, and we're going to do songwriting. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we have a bright future in sales, like Fountains of Wayne used to say in their song. But the other thing is, and I'm done with the jokes about me becoming a rock star at 60 years old, okay? Because I'm not trying to become a rock star. I'm just trying to have fun, just like everything else that I do. So Betsy better knock off that. Oh, by the way, our manager is my wife.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's pretty tough on us.
She's manager.
She keeps us. Yeah, she's a manager. But we do have to share. We have to talk about one story. So I think we can both tell this story, because, you know, we did drink so much that we probably had 2 different versions of what happened. But we actually, for just like a minute, I thought I was a concert promoter, and I got in touch with Tommy Stinson's manager, and then we talked him into doing an end of the tour gig. He was touring the East Coast, and he was coming up from like South
Georgia,
Carolina,
yeah, something like that, right?
And we talked him into coming to March with Music.
Yeah.
So well, you spent a lot of time with him. How'd it go?
Yeah, Tommy and I had a couple of drinks in the back. It was amazing. I mean, it was just, you know, when the bass player from your favorite band is, you know, walking around the place where you teach music, and you tell everyone about how great this band is and stuff like that. It was surreal. It was like a full circle that came to be. And
then what about the stage? What about that?
Yeah, we wound up building a stage. Before we built the stage, my neighbor had lent us these risers that had come from his elementary school, and we wound up bringing them in. And Anthony and I were carrying them in one time, and like we held them up like that. Anthony hops up on top of the stage, and you were like, it's a little high, because your head was like almost hitting the ceiling on that one. Anyway, we wound up building a stage for it, and yeah, it was great. There was probably 25, 30 people there that night, and it was like a replacement show, acoustic show with Tommy and
well, that's the thing I remember about it, because they, you know, they have the VIP, right, which is always like so funny, because I went and saw Tommy Stinson in Arizona, in Phoenix, and with Alex, and I bought the VIP ticket. So the regular ticket's $25 and the VIP ticket is $100. So I go, and there's like 9 people at the show. Okay, only 2 idiots that bought a VIP ticket. Okay, so the VIP meant that you could like hang out with Tommy Stinson in the courtyard before he went to the concert. But when he went to the concert, I was closer to him than when I was in the courtyard. And I spent $100 for like, plus I bought him like a bottle of bourbon. So like it cost me like, you know, and I was like 2 feet away from him for the whole concert. But at our show, we had 1 VIP. And I think when I talked to that, who's the guy that opened for him?
Dave Dashdown.
Dave Dashdown.
Yeah.
So you know, when that guy, I actually went to the hotel to like kind of see if he needed a ride, and that guy was outside, and you know, he was smoking a cigarette, and he looked like, you know, the cat dragged him in. So I was like, oh, must be the guy that's with Tommy Stinson. And they had one VIP. What was his name?
Dave.
Dave, the
Dave
VIP.
Herrick. I know. I've known Dave forever.
So normally on these things, because I listen to some of the stories from the other places, like they'll have a VIP and the dude will get like really drunk, and then Tommy and Dashdown will have to take care of him, right? But that's not exactly what happened at ours.
That's not exactly.
So we went to Marchwood Tavern, and then of course, like, you know, my brother got to invite like 72 people to the VIP. So now we have like, and then there was like the Undertaker, James Terry. He came up, he was hanging out, and I was like, hey, I'm on a job, you know, I'm like a concert promoter.
Sure.
I got a job to do. Don't be bothering me.
Right.
So everybody's coming up, and I'm ordering food, and everybody's drinking, and it became like, to the point that we had to take care of Tommy and Dashdown. It wasn't like we had to take care of the VIP guy. We had to take care of him, and so by the time we got to the show, which by the way didn't go off for like, you know, what, 2 hours after it started.
Late.
So it was a late start, and you know, all those stories about you know, replacement shows and how like you were rolling the dice when you went to the show. We just got it to happen again.
Yeah.
I don't know how we pulled it off, but we got a true replacement show in 2020.
2020. It was karma for us.
In 20, maybe that's why the pandemic came in. Got mad at us for all that stuff that we did. But didn't you play a little bit too with them on stage?
Yeah, the song, you and Alex were begging him to play the song Sunday, or Saturday. Our song's called Sunday.
Saturday,
yeah, his song's
yeah.
called Saturday. And he just was like, I can't remember it. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, Rick will play it with you. So they pulled me up, and yeah, we got some video of that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the funny thing about that was is that I only had the sheet. I didn't have the words because I know the words by heart.
Right.
But he didn't know the words.
And then he threw the sheet, and I didn't know the chords.
Yeah, and then the sheet went too.
Right.
So I didn't, you know, I mean, I didn't know how hard it was because, you know, when I play with you, I just go up and follow along. And I thought, like, how hard could this be? The guy wrote the song, but it didn't exactly turn out like that. And then the next day, we had lunch with him on the way out, and it turns out, like, you know, he's the nicest guy in the world.
He's the best.
And
awesome.
And we stayed friendly with him, and it's sad when you know, I put all the pictures on Facebook, and I got these nut jobs from like Chicago that said they, you know, were in the music business, and Tommy Stinson is you know, crazy or something like that. They just don't understand. I talked to him at lunch about him, you know, changing legislation in Hudson, New York. I mean, this guy's like a real person, and I think that's the thing that we like about these people, these Dave Perners and Paul Westerbergs, if he ever gets out of his basement, and Gary Loris, and you know, these people from Minneapolis. They're just like real people. You can just talk to them. So we did write a song called, what is it? It's Sunday. It's called Sunday.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you know, I don't want to say, to be totally transparent, it's kind of written in the vein of a replacement song. It is. And, you know, but we're going to try to do it justice. So you want to play?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.